and it's tough for me to answer that because I'm a fan of that whole era. In fact,
Right.
one of the things I love to do at shows is before the audience gets let in, if there's a vendor, I will go to the vendors because I'm always looking to see, because Vince has bought all the AWA footage and you can't get it, but I'm always hoping that there's going to be some guy there that's got it all bootlegged and I can get it. But one show I was at in, I think, Williamsport, Pennsylvania, the home of the Little League World Series, there's a guy that's got all these DVDs, but they're not just the official WWE releases. I can tell that he's made them, and I bought the complete history of Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman. It's like 4 discs that are on, like, DVD Rs and stuff like that, because I'm fascinated with that. And the only thing I could usually do is look it up. I think Comedy Central over here had aired like an hour-long kind of special on it. But you bring up a valid point. Like, I know the Hall of Fame is jaded, but I was very happy to see that they were going to put Davey Boy in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Last year when I was at WrestleMania, to see Wahoo McDaniel go in on the Legends wing, even though it's not a brick and mortar, I was very proud because, of course, watching Wahoo all these years and being able to see him. But yeah, why haven't you just brought up something like, why haven't I ever thought of that? Yeah, if anybody deserves to be in that celebrity wing, it is Andy Kaufman. Him in I mean, can you imagine? I would love, and even though he's told these stories over and over, but just to get to sit down and talk with like a Jerry Lawler about some of the stuff that was going on. Because of course at that time, I believe Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler split the booking 6 months on and 6 months off to keep themselves kind of fresh. So that whole territory is interesting. And I do remember, was it Foxy Brown? He challenges, and then Lawler's going to train her. And you're right, not just the things he said about women, but the things he said about the people of Memphis, how stupid they are. And we got this thing, it's called soap, these different promos that, and what I'll have to do is I'll have to dig that DVD out and see if I do have it. I'm sure it's all on YouTube anyway, but it's just, some of these DVDs I bought from these people were just bang on, like it was in order, this promo, this match, and it was just, I'm like, dude, I love that. Because I don't know how much of a collection of like WWE releases you have, but I have a ton of them, and I'm looking at them right now. But one of my favorite DVDs, and not necessarily my favorite faction, but with the new and improved DX, is a 3-disc DVD they did, but it just went straight up order of what happened. There was no cutting into, well, me and Sean at that time. It was just bang, bang, bang. And I'm like, dude, I love it because it's just everything's in order. And that's what these DVDs I bought with Kaufman. I got the best of Bobby the Brain Heenan in the AWA. But yeah, no, Kaufman does not get enough recognition. I think if you bring him up, everybody is still Taxi. And I think a majority of the world of people that are not pro wrestling fans, no Taxi, they would be shocked at the coffee throwing incident.
I mean, there's only there was the movie that came out with Jim Carrey that kind of shone a light on it a little bit, because it was quite a big thing in the movie. But also just thinking about it, it's like it was unheard of maybe for a celebrity to come on and want to be a villain. But he loved that. That's what he wanted. The wrestling to him was an escape, because it gave him that platform that he couldn't quite do on the stage, because it was always getting annoyed or whatever. The fact that he could express himself so much more, and he ended up just working everyone. But you imagine somebody like with that mind in a wrestler's body, and you'd probably have like the greatest, one of the greatest villain characters of all time. Like even the promoter wouldn't know who the hell he's talking to, or probably what to expect.
Just think about what kind of a promoter he would have become had he not passed away at an early age.
Yeah.
Just because he was a fan, and then I read somewhere that he never cashed his checks from Memphis.
No. Yeah.
I just read that recently, and I know Netflix over here had a a Jim Carrey special on it. And he talked a little bit about how he felt like Andy Kaufman kind of
I
entered
saw
into
that.
his.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
But now here's my question for you. They talked about the Jim Carrey and Jerry Lawler not getting along on the set. Are we getting worked on that end too?
Exactly.
That's what's so cool.
Exactly.
It's so many different
Yeah.
layers.
I feel it's kind of weird because that documentary they made, I think in it he said he wanted to make it more like how the documentary came out, and that he wanted to what you didn't know what was real and what wasn't, even with Jim Carrey. So it's like another layer, which was really complex. But actually, that would have made a lot of sense, to be honest with you. But yeah, it did feel like maybe they were working us again. I know that Jim Ross, whenever he spoke about it, he's always felt that Jim Carrey did put a little bit more of a spin than there actually was, and that Jerry and Andy did get on a lot better than what Jim Carrey had you believe. But yeah, I mean, amazing stuff. And again, I don't want to take over your show here, but
Oh, please do. Somebody's got to.
something I want to mention about old school as well compared to today, and what I really miss as well. This is like a love letter back to the old days, right? But his champions is the way a champion would carry themselves. I'm talking about Nick Buckwinkle, one of my favorite characters. Him and Bobby Heenan, man, they was like gold. And obviously, Flair took a lot of that, from the guys before, like Buddy Rogers. But the way a champion presented himself back there, and again, for people that are not familiar, there was a big NWA title that would be, I think it was all signed off by most of the promoters that they were gonna, basically say that was our world champion. And there was a bit of a code, there was a bit of a respect thing going on. Some promotions, of course, they went off slightly separate ways and they had their own belts and whatnot. But for the most part, the NWA title was such a, recognized thing. And, Flair or whoever would go into the territory and, face the then guy. And I loved that idea of that. I mean, and I love to go back and watch some of those matches. Like you mentioned earlier about matches that we thought we'd never see. One of those kind of ones I'm thinking about when you say that is when I think it was Dusty Rhodes and Billy Graham. Like he got the New York guy, and he got Dusty Rhodes, and they should never have really got together. They did, and it happened. And I love things like that because it was so separate. It was so segregated in some areas. You would never see these guys overlap. But yeah, the heavyweight champion, like who's like your sort of go-to guys as a champion? Like who was one of your, I mean, maybe you got two or three, but who were those guys for you that held the belts, even if it's not the NWA? But
Yeah, well, I'm the AWA guy. Definitely Nick
yeah,
Bockwinkel, Vern Gagne, and then, of course, almost speaking exactly what you're talking about. I know Memphis used to have Ric Flair come in. That was their recognized world champion, and then it switched in the 80s there. They were with the AWA. And, of course, at their house shows, Kurt Hennig is the AWA champion, and he's fighting Jerry Lawler. And then eventually they get to a fan vote for this final match. And who's going to be the referee? Is it going to be Jackie Fargo, or is it going to be Kurt's dad, Larry the Axe Hennig? And, of course, we know what happens. It's Jackie Fargo and Jerry Lawler, who had always fought everybody that came in but never won the big one, wins the AWA world champion. And then I've got to respect the fact that Lawler did the same thing. If you like wrestling and you don't, if the only thing you know about Jerry Lawler is he's a pretty funny commentator and dude, he's hilarious, but go back and watch his wrestling career.
absolutely.
But the fact that they eventually led to the Super Clash 3 with Jerry Lawler and Kerry Von Erich. But to answer your question, Nick Bockwinkel, awesome world champion, the weight carried himself. Obviously, Ric Flair, Vern Gagne was always somebody that, even though when I first started watching wrestling, he was kind of, he would retired, but you go back in history and look at
I want to ask you a question about AW because I know you're a big fan of it. And now they had I believe there was a film that they made a film about wrestling, and Vern Gagne was very much in it. I saw a clip, and it looked terrible because Vern Gagne was just being Vern. He was like, "Hey, you're going to be a wrestler." It looks like he was reading off something, but it's one of those things. Like, it'd probably be so bad it's good. I need to see that. But have you
Probably
seen
get
that?
it on
What I'm
YouTube.
talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah. Okay.
The Wrestler.
Is that what it was called? Okay.
The Wrestler came out in 1974,
Oh,
1973-ish.
right.
It's got it's total kayfabe. Vern's the world champion, and Ed Asner, who people know from Lou Grant, is the promoter, and Billy Robinson is the guy they're trying to match him up
Wow.
with. But you go in there, and Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch are in some scenes. It's worth it just to kind of watch it and see what's Vern Gagne's. His name is Mike in the movie. He's the champion.
Okay.
But you'll love it because when it goes back, it's almost got like the footage that I'm hoping that we can get from the British wrestling.
Sure.
But it's almost got like this 8mm stuff of Billy Robinson and Vern going on, and it's you gotta watch it. I got it out of the really cheap DVD bins a long time ago. It has, as all things do when you move, like my wrestling magazines have left me somehow, but I know that I saw it recently. It was on YouTube. So hopefully, The Wrestler, Vern Gagne. You got to check it out.
And his son Greg, who he always gets like a lot of.
I'm going to stop you. You're going to continue, but when anybody ever asks me who my favorite wrestler is, it's hands down Greg Gagne, and I have no shame. I love Greg Gagne. Continue to answer your question. I just wanted to let you know beforehand.
There you go, big admission. Well, I was going to say, like, I feel like he gets a lot of blowback because obviously he's the son of the promoter, right? But whenever I've watched his matches, I'm like, he's pretty decent. Now, is he like a victim of that situation with his dad and the fact that maybe, his dad, I mean, obviously his dad didn't hang up his boots maybe, at the right time. He did want to keep going on. But do you feel like that really, his name, even though in today's, you'd say it's an enhancement sometimes, but back then it certainly wasn't, and the old school mentality. And I can't imagine what it was like being a second generation with other wrestlers in the locker room, a lot of jealousy, a lot of politics. But, he wasn't that bad to me. I mean, he was pretty decent. He had some great matches, right? I mean, why does he get such a bad rap?
Well, I think what happened is he got exactly what you're talking about, the jealousy of him being the, Vern's kid. But I think that's what really hurt him, was his loyalty to his father and to the company that they built. I just found something I cannot. The internet is great sometimes, and then the other times it really frustrates me. Somebody had a list on one of these Facebook groups. It was a list of unofficial title changes, like title changes that didn't happen. And I screenshotted it, and in 1979, it's got Greg Gagne down. I'm like, wait, I've never even heard of this. Of course, we know that there was a no disqualification match between Bockwinkel and Hogan in the early 80s, and they kept, doing that, we got to pull it back. Even though there was no disqualification, you're disqualified. And it's like they kept screwing with Hogan. Greg, of course, a lot of people know Jumpin' Jim Brunzell from his time as the Killer Beast. But Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell as the High Flyers is one of the best tag teams that you're ever going to see. I encourage people to go back and watch the High Flyers versus the East-West Connection, which, of course, is Adrian Adonis, a young, thin, athletic Adrian Adonis, and Jesse the Body Ventura. So I'm gonna pull back the curtain here. So the first time I ever watched AWA or any wrestling, Greg Gagne was getting trained by Sergeant Slaughter, and I remember Slaughter saying, "Your partner ran out on you." Well, that was Brunzell went to the WWE along with like Bobby Heenan and all these guys. So Greg's got this Rambo camouflage on. He's part of Camp Slaughter, but everybody rips on it now, but I can't even rip on it now because as a kid in that position with Rambo being in the movies and on TV, I was like, dude, that's cool. Sergeant Slaughter's the man. Now he's going to team with Greg, take him under the wing. And then this is the part where I'm pulling back the curtain, and I have to admit it. So I was a very small circle of friends that liked pro wrestling at my high school, and there was a young lady that was in this small circle of friends. But of course, she loved the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Rockers, all the what she was supposed to like. I imagine she would have loved the Von Erichs, but all the pretty boys. Well, Kurt Hennig uses a roll of dimes to beat Nick Bockwinkel at Super Clash 2, May 2nd, 1987. Now, I can't even remember my social security number, but this stupid stuff is stuck in my head. So Hennig, Mr. Perfect to everybody else, is this heel. And now we've got, Larry the Axe and Vern Gagne. They used to feud. So now we got Greg kind of going after the title. Well, they were a tag team. And then I remember Greg reaches for a tag, and Kurt either turns his back on him, and I was like, holy shit, what is he doing? Now what am I, 10 years old, 12, whatever, and I'm like, man, this is killing me. She kept saying how hot Kurt Hennig was and how cute. And in my head, I couldn't imagine. How do you think this guy is cute? He turned his back on Greg. So obviously they had me hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
But there is a match that's ESPN quality, or on ESPN. I think it's on YouTube. But I remember Greg was gonna. I don't even care if the title's on the line. I want Kurt Hennig, and then Hennig says, "Great, if it was an untitled match, we can wrestle all day, every day." Which was like, shit. But there was one match on ESPN where he got a hold of him, and Greg Gagne, the consummate fan favorite, good guy, babyface. You can just feel the tension even at home. And I remember Greg's got his old tie-dyed shorts on from the 70s, and he just starts lacing in, very uncharacteristic to Kurt Hennig. And of course, that match, Greg doesn't win the title or anything. But man, to answer your original question, you can see how passionate. And I want to get Greg Gagne on the lockdown sessions so badly, because I know I've talked to like Frankie DeFalco and some of these other guys. Oh yeah, I've got Greg's information, and I'm like, dude, I'm never gonna ask anybody like, hey, give me Greg's phone number. But I'm always like, if you talk to him, can you say you had a good time, and maybe he'd want to do something like this.
Imagine
just talk and chat. But no, he was my first good guy. I will always. And sometimes I had shied away and go, well, you're not gonna know, because a lot of people are like, I don't know who that is. Because when I interview some of these indie guys, I'm like, okay, when did you first get into wrestling? And they're like, it was 2006. And I'm like, well, who were you watching on TV? I didn't watch wrestling on TV, but I played the PlayStation game. I'm like, holy shit.
You're in trouble.
But I got to find out if anybody's watching this, or like what happened with this title change, because he had to have won it from Nick Bockwinkel, and then they must have done the quote-unquote dusty finish and given it back. But man, no, I think his problem was this: he was loyal to his dad to a fault, into the AWA, and then when that all everything went under. I know he worked for WCW, and he worked for WWF as like backstage, but they always had said he was trying to help too much, and they get rid of him. In fact, thanks to Stu Palmer, Stu's Wrestling Podcast, cheap plug, he got me an interview with Randy Hogan. Right. And Randy and I were talking about it, and Randy goes, not the name drop, he goes, but I did Stone Cold's Wrestling Podcast, and he goes, off the air, we happened to start talking about Greg Gagne, and Steve said he doesn't get the respect he deserved. Great seller, great worker. And I'm like, for me, my heart was beaming with pride just to hear.
That's amazing.
Man, thanks, Greg Gagne, man. I could talk all day.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I just don't know why he gets such a bad rap, but yeah, it's one of those things, I guess. But yeah, I do miss, like I say, I wasn't around in those days, but I wish I was around. Late 60s, all the 70s. just touring around. Like, imagine what that would have been. But another place as well is Puerto Rico, which I've started watching a lot of that stuff recently. And to say wild is an understatement. It's pretty crazy. The fans, I mean, it's like you take your life into your own hands being a heel there by the looks of it. But again, that was another place that was on the radar quite a bit during that time where guys would go. I'm sure they thought it was going to be like a bit of a holiday until they got there, and it depends what position they were in, because if you weren't a baby face, you're going to have some bad trouble. But I've recently been listening to a lot of Dutch Mantel talk about when he used to book out there, sitting on the beach during the day and putting these things together, and how much stuff. But yeah, it's just, again, Puerto Rico, are you familiar with that quite a bit? And those guys, Carlos and
Yeah, Carla, the Colognes,
the
yeah.
Colognes, massive, man.
From the magazines, and then the
Yeah, same
the
me.
the Studcast. That's a podcast. And then,
Yep.
do you know the story? And I think it might have been on Ric Flair's old podcast, that he actually went down there and he ended up just dropping the belt, and he brought Piper down with him. And he said Piper was all, coked out of his mind, but he actually got to the end. He's like, "F this. He can keep the belt. We're getting the hell out of here, and we'll get the belt later on." So there's like a guy who's essentially like a jobber that has an
Yeah.
NWA
Well,
title. That's a great story. I think if it's Ric Flair tells it, it's got to be on YouTube somewhere, even if it's on his podcast. But yeah, and then
yeah.
on Robert Fuller's The Studcast, they're talking about fans like throwing rocks into the ring.
Yeah. Bags of urine as well, apparently, was quite common. Just at wrestlers you didn't like, and knives quite bad as well.
Yeah.
It's like, what a time.
And of course, that's where we lost Bruiser Brody.
Right. Yeah, huge story. Um, but yeah, what a time! And you know what? The other layer to that, of course, you got this 70s territory, and then way across to the east, you've got Japan going on, and they've got their own culture building up as well. And you get even interlinks with that, and you think to yourself, like, again, with World of Sport there, Canadian Stampede in Canada, what was going on in Mexico there was some, I mean, again, it's part of their culture there as well, right? So a very different time, but the only way you'd find out were magazines. I mean, that's how I learned everything. I want to learn all Japan. Okay, I get this out. I'm reading about Inoki or whatever. But until those magazines came, I wouldn't have a clue. But I think it's the magazines that have made me want to go back and watch more of this stuff. I always encourage a lot of wrestling fans who get a bit fed up with today's product, then just go back a little bit. You'll find at least one territory that you'll be hooked on. Even Georgia Championship Wrestling, I used to watch that and be like, what's this? I don't. It took me a while to get into it, but again, it seemed like all of them had real identity, that they weren't really mimicking each other too much. They felt passionate that their way of doing it was right. And again, you couldn't really, it wasn't like you had Vern Gagne turning up at, I don't know, like a Memphis, showing the crowd and going, what are they doing down here? Whereas today, I think if you look at the landscape today with AEW, WWE, they're constantly, you can't not be looking at each other. It's in your face. It's through social media. It's through the fans, and they can watch each other's. And again, I think there's a lot of influences that are taken, unfortunately, where you kind of get lost on that identity quite a bit. The only promotion I've seen come around where I feel like they're mainstream to a degree, they're not huge, but they've kind of kept it, they know where they are, they know their market, is probably something like a Ring of Honor, where if I've ever gone to one of their shows, it doesn't really matter who's on, they've got this identity and they stick with it, this same formula. And for the most part, it's it's mainly about what happens in the ring, but you know what you're getting. Whereas if you go back and you watched the way TNA were behaving for a few years, especially when they got big around maybe 2010, and they got the Spike deal, you could tell that, oh man, they're watching the other side too much. You know, they're watching the other. I remember once there was a part when Daniel Bryan was the champion, the underdog story, and then the next minute I find, what's the guy's name? He ended up in WWE, in fact, small guy as well. Forget his name. He's gone back to Impact recently. I forget this guy's name. God, I'm gonna have to look that up. But yeah, they did the same damn story on Impact, and I was like, oh man, this is so similar, you know?
Yeah, it reminds me of when Armageddon, the movie, came out, and then later on that summer, Deep Impact came out a few weeks later. It's like, we got to have original ideas. And just for the fans watching, like, I know I will tear apart WWE and I'll tear apart some of the other stuff, but man, I wish we should rejoice and celebrate the fact that we have, especially in this time of COVID, that we have all this entertainment. Like, I will turn on Impact. And in fact, December 7th, 2020, last night, in case you're watching this later, was War Games NXT TakeOver. And I wanted to tweet, and I've tweeted some stuff that's kind of my own opinion, but I wanted to tweet, you know what? Does this promotion not understand how ridiculous the piped in crowd noise is? And the guys beating on the plexiglass, like, is not helping me. When I watch Slammiversary with Impact, if you haven't got a chance to watch that yet, I didn't even notice. And then their last one too, the Slammiversary, Bound for Glory. They're Bound for Glory this year.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care that there wasn't fans. I didn't notice that there wasn't fans because I was all about the product. And really, it's because of my, like, going, man, they won me over with Slammiversary, and they'd won me over actually at Bound for Glory when we sponsored them. But I can't get into the, like, I should just shut my mouth and go, hey, we got NXT, we got AEW, going to go to Impact, and I know people are going, whoa, and I'm guilty of it because we have a podcast. Like, we share our own opinions, but a lot of times on my podcast, I'm going, hey, the opinion I'm about to share is my own, not Wrestling Travels. This is just where I see. But, you know, people are going, well, this Sting has a multi-year deal, and this Impact thing's only a one-off, and then Callis only has a month left on his contract, and he's going to manage Omega. Okay, you know what? If that's true, shut up. I don't want to know. You know, you're telling me that if they plan this is only a one-off, and the amount of buzz that got and still is getting, that this tomorrow night Omega is going to be on Impact with Callis, that they're not going, hey, we might be leaving money on the table here. But of course, you and I know from history, these guys are not going to be able to work together for too long because it's all about the money and the recognition. But that night on Twitter, I stayed up way too late because a lot of the Impact stars were going, hey, here's my dream match. I want so-and-so versus so, like, I was like, man, everybody's kind of buying into it. Whether they're pulling me in hook, line, or sinker doesn't really matter. So the point of my incoherent rambling just now is we just need to shut up and enjoy the wrestling. I do rag on it. I do, because I think nobody's going to watch. I do have opinions, and if I'm going to keep them quiet, some of them I really do. But a lot of times, as you saw in the last podcast, I almost took the heel roll right out from SP3. But I'm like, at least we got differing opinions, and some fans will agree with me, and some fans will agree with him.
I'm with you. I mean, I watch the current product. I'm not going to hate on it every single week because someone who isn't a wrestling fan is just going to turn around to me and go, stop watching it then. And that's the easiest thing to do, right? I mean, why am I still watching it? So, and it's not a case of always that you have to, just because I do the reviews or anything like that. I mean, I could, if I dislike something that much, I don't care if it's work or not, I wouldn't do it. So of course there's always something. I would probably say that there have been things that have spoiled it for me. Like one of the big things, and this goes back, whatever the SummerSlam was in New York, where Taker and Brock got it on at the end. I don't know which one that was, but I was there live for that in the arena, and I remember watching Raw the night after, and there are a few things I thought, oh man, if I was a kid, the love would have just gone like that. So there was a situation where Dolph Ziggler had just finished the match, sold his ass off like he always does, over the top as usual, and everything else, and he was left almost, flat in the ring. Then this guy comes out with an earpiece saying, "You got to get off. You got to get off." And everyone can hear him. Dolph Ziggler does a 100-meter sprint. Okay, just gets up, 100-meter sprint off the set because Brock's coming out in the next segment and they got to make room. And I was just like, oh my God, like, okay, I know this isn't legit, but okay, at least give me some suspense of disbelief. And if I'm a kid and I look at that and I think, hang on, he was, it's unbelievable. And the other thing to that is I kept seeing after a match had finished, the guys wouldn't know where the camera was, where the hard cam was. So you'd have the referee beneath them that's never on the hard cam side going, yeah, the time when to cheer. And then obviously when the commercial come on or the camera cut to do it again. And I was just like, oh my God, like, how are the wrestlers, like, they're just so robotic, and entrances are like a video game. It's like there's no difference to any entrance any week. And I know that there's been something said where they're told that you can't sell an injury now because they want you to look strong on camera every week. And I'm like, that just takes away from some of it as well. But it's even that camera angles are the same if they look down or up, or the lighting. It's exactly the same as a video game coming out. And if you go back and just watch, I don't know, even early 2000s, it wasn't as perfect as it's coming across now. So I feel if there's the thing I dislike about, and it's not just WWE, it's all kind of modern wrestling, it's that they try to make it too perfect. It's too much. Production side has maybe taken over way too much. And don't get me wrong, WWE does a tremendous job with their production. You can't fault it any which way. But I kind of feel like, for me personally, it's just got to that stage where it's just too perfect, and everything has to be done, in such strategic ways. Like that group, I don't know what they were called, the group that were coming in, breaking up everything every week. I forgot the name.
Retribution.
Retribution. So they're a group that, are doing this to WWE, and then yet in the drafts, they've got photos up of these people in the gear. And they've got names, and they're going to have wrestling matches. And yeah, it's just like all logic is lost, and it's just too perfect, and I don't know. I mean, I might just be coming across old, but I think if I was a kid, I think some of the magic that I had growing up and loving the wrestling, I think that would have been taken away with just some of those things, and like we always say, you never get rewarded being a long-time WWE fan. There's only a few times where I've seen that reward come in, and very recently, I don't know if you saw it, but on the WWE Network, the latest Steve Austin podcast with Undertaker, and I don't. Have you seen that one?
I haven't watched it yet. No.
Okay. Well, for spoilers alert for anybody
No,
that
that's
hasn't
fine.
seen it, switch off. But there was a bit in it, and I was fascinated about this. Do you remember when Undertaker turned up at UFC, and he says,
Brock?
"Do you want to do it?" And it created all this ripple effect, didn't it? It was like there's all this stuff going in WWE, and yet that one little thing just had everybody jumping up. Well, Austin says, like, was that meant to happen? And apparently, yes. Undertaker and Brock had worked that out before he got there. And the reason he said he came round that way, he was going out of the long way round just to do that moment with him, because he didn't forget. The only difference is that he thought Brock, and Brock obviously thought he was going to be victorious, but he still got it in there because he knew that his UFC career was coming to an end, and they could maybe do a bit of business. But I just thought, wow, like, you're never going to get guys doing that as much now. But just that little seed that was planted did make such a big thing. Undertaker said on it that, he wishes it had happened a lot sooner. That was the only downside to it. But yeah, like he went there, done a little business with him, and that was magic because everybody did really believe it. They did a great job at, you know, making me convinced. I thought they had some legit beef with one another. But yeah, those things I would love to see come back a bit more. I'd love to see guys. I know that when I think it was Conor McGregor was shooting on a few of the wrestlers, a lot of the wrestlers got so defensive. Don't talk about our business like this. And I was thinking, this is good. Let him do it. Let him, you know, he's trying to build it up more. Do you feel, Justin, that like just, and again, sorry if I'm keeping you here. I've been here for ages.
Hey,
I'm talking
good.
wrestling. I'm just shooting here with.
I love it.
But, UFC, and boxing especially, recently is doing professional wrestling better than professional wrestling is right now in terms of, although the promoter is at a disadvantage because he can't pick the winners. So he doesn't know if the guy he's got all the money in is going to lose, and that's a possibility every time. And that's a downside to it. So if you've got a Ronda Rousey, it could all go terribly wrong, as it did in the end. And that money had gone and she ended up in WWE. But I feel like those guys are doing basically, I mean, Floyd Mayweather is like the ultimate at it. I mean, he's doing Ric Flair, in my opinion. He's the heel, you know, pay to watch me get beat is basically what he's saying. And I won't get beat, but, you know, pay to watch me get beat. And he'll build up the guy ever so much and then bring it back on him again. But I just feel these guys are better at that performance side of it than the wrestlers are. And do you think that's down to just the over scripting that there is, or do you think that's a lost art in the schools? Like, because I've never known of a time where you know, and I know you mentioned Roman earlier, and I thought one thing I do remember is that bloody, what was the one where he came out and he said something like, suffering succotash, or something. Jesus Christ, who told him that was going to be cool? And, you know, he looked at the camera even, like, big smile, and it was just awful. But yeah, do you think that's just something? Go on, mate.
The pooper scooper, Dean Ambrose. No, to answer your question, I think that is, I think it's because of the overscripting, the overwriting, and it is either a lost art now or it is in danger of becoming one. The boxing and wrestling, yeah. I'm not so sure that you don't control the outcome of boxing, though. I'm not convinced sometimes, but right, you know, I did my interview with former Nexus Michael Tarver, now known as Monster Tarver, which, check it out, dude, he's a beast, and I got to get him back on. I got to get him on with. I told Stewie Stu Palmer to check him out for Stu's Wrestling Podcast, because, little side note here, him and I have interviewed some of the same people, but it's a totally different interview with each person, which is awesome. So I really want to give Stu almost everybody I've always already interviewed, because I want to hear Stu's version on it. But Monster Tarvers went from being broke to the next week he's at WrestleMania, and he's part of Floyd Mayweather's posse. And they pull him aside and go, hey, in order to make this believable, you're going to hang with Floyd all day. And he said, dude, it was it was like the lifestyles of rich and famous, you know, hung out and stuff. So yeah, Floyd Mayweather obviously just announced last night or today that he's going to take on that Logan Paul or whatever. And that. Yeah. But, you know, here's another thing I want to ask, you know, you Brits, and I'm going to be stereotype you here. And I'm allowed to, because I have friends over there. I've got a good friend who lives in Newcastle. Right. He worked over here in the States with me, and we would watch UFC. He would know every guy from the undercard all the way up, and also the same with boxing. Now, I used to love boxing, and then it just kind of lost favor over here. Tyson Fury, your guy. I don't want to make you angry with me. What they brought him in, when did he wrestle? Like some pay-per-view? I was like, that guy, it was one of those Saudi Arabia ones. And they did like, oh, he's training. And I was like,
man, what about that bloody video they put up where Braun came in when he was training out of nowhere? That was so bad.
Because when I'm at wrestling or a wrestling school or I'm watching, the first thing I'm watching is from your heel to your mid calf. I'm watching your footwork, and I'm like, how can a guy who's a boxer have? I mean, obviously, because it's not natural for him to be a pro wrestler, but I'm like, that Tyson Fury has some of the shit-iest footwork I had ever seen. And then they were talking about him coming back, and I'm like, I don't want to hate the guy. He's a freaking phenomenal athlete, but man, I mean, when Strowman's carrying you in that match, which I'll go back all the way. Remember when Lawrence Taylor fought
Yeah.
Bam Bam Bigelow?
Hmm.
And I was at that time I was even like, this is gonna be horrible. And then it was a good match. And then you do your deep thought about it the next few days and you realize, dude, that was Bam Bam. Taylor was gassed.
Hmm.
That was all Bigelow. But yeah, to get back on, it's a lost art. It's going to be more of a lost art. I love, if you haven't watched, we've talked a little bit off the air about Ohio Valley Wrestling, OVW, Al Snow's Wrestling Academy,
Hmm.
what he's doing there. It's a vocational school as well for these talents, but they're learning everything. What happens is everything gets lost. You and I being an old school, from people being on the road, learning stories, being in the locker room, going over moves, and not doing this, which we all have in front of us. And, you know, that a lot of the stuff is getting lost. And that's why when I say like some of these moves are getting lost, almost like what is old can be new again. But like places like Ohio Valley, places like Chicagoland, like John Bullard's Chicagoland Championship Wrestling cannot be what it is or what he wants it to become without guys doing stellar promos. It just can't.
Yeah.
I mean, because I want to invest in that person. I want to know why or where they come from. I recently wrestled it was November 14th. I did, now some people would say I'm past my prime. Most people would say this guy never had a prime. But I did a series of promos online, and I was very proud of them. I'm going to break the wall here because I was supposed to be a heel to the guy who was wrestling in his hometown, who's beloved like in his hometown. Like dude gets a hero's welcome every time. And it was a charity show for a little boy who passed away from cancer. So I've got to heal up on this guy. And I did most of my stuff, and I only had to do an extra take when I kind of fumbled over my words, but that was just so fun I took it like a supervillain in Marvel or DC. Like, I gotta believe that I am the hero, not him.
Mm-hmm.
So my promos were all like, because this guy wrestles a heel everywhere else, but his hometown, I mean, you can't stop him. He's babyface. And I'm like, look him up. He's a bully. He's a freaking bully. I turned on him last year because I'm sick of his stuff, and I'm going to end his career. I'm going to do, man, for one of the biggest times that I got heat when we did that match, coming out, and you know how it is. You're like, well, I want to cheer the good guy or the bad guy or whatever, but I'm sitting there and I got booed. He got the cheer. I mean, it couldn't have worked. It's like it was scripted, but that's what I think was now for that show. And people are going to be pissed at me for saying it, but trust me, if they watched our interview this long and they were on that show, then they deserve to hear this. Nobody else did promos. Maybe one or other. I'm like, why can't you just say, hey, I'm at this show. It's a charity show. And I don't know who I'm fighting on November 14th, but you got to get down there. I'm a big proponent in selling the show on the promos, but also a little behind the scenes. There's a promotion I'm going to be helping start and running. And I'm like, you know what? The young guys, they got to sell tickets. They got to sell tickets with their promos, with their social medias. And if they've got to go door to door and sell tickets, you got to sell tickets. This is not a backyard show where everybody's a weekend warrior can just come up and, hey, I'm going to show up. To my point with the WWE, a lot of these guys, it's not their fault that they're missing these rides because they just signed a woman who's a basketball player.
Mm.
She may have been a fan, but most likely, now she's never going to be able to go on the road, do stories, pick something up from this guy in the Midwest, pick something up from this guy on the East Coast, or the same with pick something up from ICW in Scotland, go to the Knights in Norwich, go
Yep.
to DNA out of London. They're not going to be able to pick, because that's what it is. You never stop learning in this
Yeah.
sport, and yes, I call it a sport, and that's what we're missing. And I think that's back to your question. That's why it's a lost art. If it's not a lost art, it's going to become one very,
Yeah.
very fast.
Well, to spin back on Tyson Fury, which I thought was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. I'm a huge Tyson Fury fan in boxing, so when I found out they were going to get him, I thought, okay, it's either going to go one way or the other. They're either going to let him be him, because if I listen to him selling these boxing fights, he's amazing. But then I watched him on WWE and I thought he's terrible. I mean, it was just so bad. And you remember the press conference they did where him and Braun, they square up and then they do this little pushing thing, and oh man. And what was funny about it is I quickly after that I went on to a boxing media outlet because I wanted to hear what their perception was of it. Man, it was terrible. It didn't paint wrestling in a good picture at all. I mean, I'm sure it was an amazing payday for him at the time. I know that there was talk about doing a Fury Lesnar match at one point, but obviously that never came around, and thank goodness probably by the end of it. But yeah, they missed the ball with that. I mean, they could have done so much more with it. It seemed odd to me that they had him at the Saudi show, which probably goes to show you how much money they pay compared to a WrestleMania, quite frankly. But there you go. Very strange dealings. But one other thing I really miss, and I've got to say this as well, is, and this isn't something that was just exclusive to territories. This used to happen in the WWF, was, and we mentioned a little bit earlier about people being their characters, but obviously the likes of the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, he went around in beautiful clothes. I remember listening to an interview with him, and he said that Vince would make him carry his Visa card around with him, and he said never ever ever get caught out short of money. He's like, we'll give it back to you, you just send us the bill, but you never ever go anywhere and you can't pay a damn bill, because that'll kill your character. And they used to take that so serious back then with everything. And obviously, it's such a lost thing today. It's one of the biggest, I suppose, I mean, with those layers that they had back then and going on the road. And again, if you were seen with each other, that was pretty condemned hard. And there were times I think that had happened. I know Hacksaw Jim Duggan and someone else at one time. I think there was
The
an
Iron Sheik.
arrest. Yeah, which wasn't great. But like, you look at where we are today, I think it's become something where wrestlers perform the character and then they go home and they're themselves again. And it's very much, that's how we're educated as fans to think. But I do miss those old days of, like, a honky tonk man was the honky tonk man. If he was in airports, he'd be getting a lot of flack, and there was no escape back then. But that's something that I really feel has lost massively for me. I really miss those days. And I can't imagine what it was like back in the territory days with people keeping the characters as best as they could. But I'm trying to think really in the timeline, mainly with WWF, when that all kind of phased out. I'm guessing maybe after the Attitude Era, maybe, as far as that went. But even then, I suppose there was parts where people were coming out of character a little bit, but not as much, nearly as much as we see today.
Yeah, I want to say that maybe mid-90s, even before the Attitude Era, because there was a big
Might be
thing, and we
right.
can look it up, and somebody right now is looking it up and calling us
Yeah.
both idiots because they have but it was a big thing in New Jersey, if they were considered
Oh, right. So you have to
sport
pay.
or sports entertainment, there was a tax. And it was like, why are we paying this tax? We might as well just go out and say it, especially on the heels of stuff like Hacksaw and Iron Sheik being caught together.
Yeah, I'd read somewhere that some territories could have done that way ahead of time, but they wouldn't because they were like, "We never want to break our code. We want you
Right?
to know this is it." So that goes to show you the level of commitment the even financially, to take that. I mean, they were probably paying through the roof as well at some places.
Right. And then back when you go to the Monday Night Wars, you got to snicker to yourself when Vince is complaining that, oh, this billionaire is got all these resources and he's buying out all these talent. Well, talk to
Yeah.
Vern and Greg. What'd you do in '84?
Hmm.
You know, you bought everybody. So and not just from the AWA, but from all the territories. I mean, there was a code that I think at the time, Vince McMahon Sr. Obviously would probably not have approved of the way things were run, but then again, where would we be right now without
Right.
that national, international?
Yeah.
That's the tough thing.
Yeah.
Um, Question: is Tyson Fury his shoot name?
I think so.
Dude,
Okay. I
that's
think so.
fantastic.
Don't count me on that, but I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
and then
he's looking for that next fight with Deontay Wilder, who's gone off the rails a little bit
oh
very
yeah,
recently on
Deontay
those
Wilder.
on those those videos he's been posting.
Now, did you watch this overhyped fight, Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor, when that happened a
Yeah.
few years back?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
watching it and I'm going, okay, here's what has to happen. And this is probably the wrestling hat. I'm like, it's a strict boxing match, but freaking Conor's got to lose it and just kick him in the head. And then his side and their side come out and just get all a huge schmoz. And then in a year or 6 months, 8 months, we've got McGregor and Mayweather in a freaking UFC style match, MMA match. And then we got to have like a third like payoff. And I was like, I can't believe they didn't do that.
Mate, the McGregor Mayweather match to me was just pure wrestling. I mean, they were really doing wrestling. They did a tour, I think, in 4 cities
They
in
flew
4
together.
days or whatever. Man, they killed it. I mean, they were just doing promos on each other. I mean, come on, as if they weren't sitting there in the back counting their money that was coming in. That was just I've never
Dude,
seen anything like it.
if that's me and you and I'm Connor and you're Mayweather, I'm going, bro, about round
Do
8
what
or
you like.
7, or you tell whenever you're ready. I'm gonna throw a kick at you. We're gonna have to make it look good. I'm not gonna knock you out, but then we're just gonna have all hell break loose, and that sets up payday number 2.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
That's seriously money left on the table.
Yeah, that's crazy. That whole fiasco was mad, and I know Conor McGregor kept bringing up the whole Inoki Muhammad Ali match
Yeah.
about that because he was like, "Oh, that's the only other time," but he kept saying, "I don't know if it was a work," and I was thinking, yeah, a lot like this seems to be honest with you, but yeah, that's
Let me ask you this about Powered 4 TV. Is there ever,
go
and
on, my
maybe you
friend.
have, or is there plans? Hopefully, obviously we're getting off of our feet here and into the business of getting a whole lot of people addicted to wrestling and watching it. But is there a day when Powered 4 TV hopefully has made enough dent in people's homes and some money where maybe Powered 4 TV, I'm not going to say you could host a Mayweather McGregor type fight, but maybe you're able to go, hey, presented to Powered 4 TV, we're going to get this federation and this promotion together and do some type of thing and hopefully, sell it out. I got to imagine that's got to be at least one of the things that if you're not at least hoping for stuff like that, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about not just wrestling going on it as well. We've actually had some discussions with. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a boxing promoter, Eddie Hearn, but yeah, he's a promoter over here in boxing. He promotes like AJ, Anthony Joshua, and we've kind of put the feelers out about having boxing come on, and a few other sports as well. Because I think the great thing with wrestling fans, even video games and stuff like this, there's quite a nice crossover with other things and entertainment. And we're certainly not just keeping to one thing, but to the point of what a lot of people do ask me. They say, and a lot of even a lot of talent have come to me and they've said, we think you're putting together a promotion. We think it's just a matter of time before you announce it. And I said, no, it's not. It's never going to be a promotion. However, what I've not ruled out is having a supercard of some sort, and we use all the wonderful promotions underneath us that are there, that we've got access to their promoters that we have good relationships with, that we could possibly do a great big gigantic show and facilitate it quite well. That's something I'd like to do in the long run. That's something that I've definitely thought about. So, but in terms of promoting, I mean, I've had my fair shares of that in the past. I'm not massively keen on it because I think, to be honest with you, there's enough out there already, and to have Powered just be like its own thing, it would make zero sense. But to put a super show together would make all the sense in the world, because you can showcase each product, through the matches. I think, again, to sound a little bit cynical, but be realistic, is that you might have issues of cross promotional matches. So you might have to have, a few promoters agreeing on some stuff. But if not, I guess you just keep it in their brackets. This is a match from DNA. This is a match from One Piece. Or, you could possibly get away with having a couple of, interpromotional matches along the way as well. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, because it showcases each promotion as well on the day. And, the ultimate winners are the fans, that get to see it. But I think, to be honest with you, I was having this chat earlier on with a promoter, and he felt the perception he had on it was that he felt the UK wrestling scene was in a territory system, like the old territories. And I had to quickly shut him down, because I said, although there are these different promotions in different areas, the wrestlers, they wrestle for everyone and anyone. There's no identity. If there was just a group of guys where 80% stayed in one place and 80% were down there, I would get that. But I said it's not like the territory system. Guys want to get paid and they go to as many places that are available, which is good because there's more. But it's not a territory system. It's not like you've got your home base group of core guys and it's built around that. But that's not to say you can't get good identity with promotions. But I think, like, if there was more of a case where some promotions really housed some core talent, I think that would it would make you go out your way to want to have to go and watch them somewhere. At the moment, our wrestlers go around the whole of the UK, so it's not like I have to go all the way up north to see a certain particular wrestler.
It'd be cool someday to have like a Chicagoland.
Yeah.
The UK promotion, stuff like that. I gotta say, from a guy who used to love boxing, and not that I don't love boxing any less, it's just really not available unless you want to pay $60 on pay-per-view. It used to be
That's
on
a lot of money, yeah.
what we call the wide world of sports. That I would think if I was a boxing promoter, I would really want to get my things on a platform such as Powered4TV. And what would be even cooler for a fan like me to kind of get into it is somebody I know is passionate about boxing, but Stu Palmer, doing his podcast, almost interviewing, like a 20-minute interview with some of these guys. And then, hey, I kind of, almost like wrestling, like I kind of get to know this guy and go, hey, all right. Almost what I'm doing with the lockdown sessions here. Like I want to get people to know these men and women and go, yeah, I want to buy a ticket. I want to buy a t-shirt from her or him and do that. But man, I would love to see some boxing on Powered 4.
Well, we're definitely a little thing here. I don't know how many people know, but this is an exclusive, that we definitely have MMA on next year. There'll be an MMA promotion joining up with us. That's confirmed. So we're trying to go into other markets, and it's kind of one of those things. The good thing with us is you're not just there's a lot of video on demand services out there, and they have maybe it's very generic. Pivot Share obviously have a lot of them, and you go on there and it is just one promotion, and you might be charged anywhere between £5 to £6 a pop, but you're only getting that one promotion. And I've spoke to a lot of these promoters sometimes, and I'll say, like, what's your figures, like, let's see how we can help you. And they might say it's only eight subscribers, and I'm like, okay, well, how do you feel about coming on with us? And sometimes you get a little bit of resistance because they're like, well, does that mean we've got to share with everyone else? Like, do we have to promote other things? And I'm like, well, here's what I'll do. I'll do you a promotional video, free of charge. I'll give you 80% of your stuff, all your best highlights, but 20% will be everything else that one of your fans can get on top of watching your product. And it just makes it value for money, right? But, some promoters, they don't get that big picture. And unfortunately, they're like, no, I don't want my fans to go and watch another promotion. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find a fan that only sticks with one indie promotion. Quite frankly, I think it'd be, you'd have to go a long ways to find somebody who's totally resistant not to watch anything else. And I say that Powered 4 is the closest thing to something like a Netflix, where it's one price, it's all there. There's no tier system. There's no exclusive to this or lower levels. It's just all there. Go and check it out. And, everything's available. There's over 25 promotions, most of them with a very big archive. I mean, TNT is one of the real gems on there. I mean, some of the matches they've put together, some of the cards they've put out, like having Pentagon there and Pac, Walter's been on there. So many of the NXT UK guys have been there, Jordan Devlin and the likes. And, you mash that up with some of the best UK talent available and the imports that they get from Impact Wrestling, AEW. There's so much stuff there that I didn't even know until basically we took them on. But yeah, they're a really big promotion. I can see them next year. If there's one promotion that I can see really growing big in the UK, it'll be TNT. I can see them doing a lot of big things. I know you've heard of Jay Apter quite a bit through Mike Angus, and he's so passionate, that guy. He really, really wants to. In fact, he's just announced another promotion, Superstar Pro Wrestling, which is going to be a touring promotion. So, I mean, he's going to have his hands full because he runs TNT. He runs a family show called Ignition, which often comes on the day after. And then he has an all-female promotion as well, Tyson Fury. And then he also has this touring promotion. And he has an MMA promotion coming out. So that guy, I don't know how he does it, but he's doing it. And so far, he's proved he can do it,
Oh, that's good to hear. Hopefully, you guys were the first to approve the vaccine, so hopefully that works well. Hopefully by this time, 6 weeks later, I ain't talking to a bunch of zombies over there, because every time I hear about a vaccine, I go back to the Will Smith movie, I Am Legend, that I saw in the theater, and I'm like, these guys all a plague, and then they had a vaccine, and it turned them all into zombies.
I'll turn up here next time, and I might have like a head missing or something, but like a mouth down here. Or it's gone
what? It might get us viewers. I'm all about it. Maybe
we'll sign up for that.
So I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to do two things here. I want to go, hey, we're gonna have this. Obviously, we're gonna split this one into a couple parts, but you and I probably could talk a lot more. So we're gonna have to do another day that we do some lockdowns. Of course, you were a fantastic guest on our podcast, so I'm looking forward to having you on. Again, when time permits, but
cool, yeah.
But the last thing I always do on here is I want the fans to know, drop us everything about Powered 4 TV.
Sure.
I know you're doing other podcasts and too. I'm the same way, dude. If you're on another podcast you're proud of, drop it right here. Does Powered 4 TV have merch? Drop it right here. But let us know as fans how we can catch up on everything. And I know you got some special deals going on.
I got some special deals. So Powered4.TV, go over. Literally as simple as that. And you're going to see some tremendous content. I'm going to give a shout out because, you know, I can't be hypocritical of Stu if I don't, you know, shout him out and a lot of my other great staff. So, but let's start with Stu's Wrestling Podcast, one of the most passionate wrestling guys out there. I only met him this year. And you know, he's so happy to send me all his latest stuff, and I watch it, and you know, he's so happy about what he does. I mean, it's sort of like it's contagious, because then I start to feel a little bit better about the business as well. But he has some tremendous guests on. I don't know how he manages to get the people he gets. Maybe through you again, I don't know, but. He gets some great guests on. We've also got, of course, another guest who goes on your show as well is Mike Angus, who is pretty much all over TNT. He's the ring announcer there, so you can check him out, and also on Wrestle Island. We've got True Wrestling Heat. They're on available as well. But a couple of our in-house guys. So we've got another John Scott. I'm not the only one. And he does... he's known as Jonas, and he's wrestling with Jonas. He also does interviews. He does reviews as well. Great guy, one of the best analyzers of professional wrestling that I've known. He really breaks down matches. I could never be that detailed, quite frankly. I don't think I'd have the patience. I don't know how he manages to do it, but he does. So check his stuff out as well. Then we've got Jess from Just Jess. Watches wrestling. She does some great videos. She does things like top tens of a lot of things. She's also got a Twitch channel out available as well that also goes onto our site. One of our amazing presenters there that we've got. And yeah, so that's the side. So not only do you get wrestling, you get all this great interviews and content, documentaries as well. And then you've got your 25 promotions. So that includes free and obviously through the paywall. So you can go over to Powered4.TV, check it out before you even put any money in. Look at what we've got. We're not saying sign up and then you find out what you get. You can see everything. You got the likes of Justin over there from what we're doing here on Wrestling Travel. You've got to check those guys out. But, you know, it's so nice to work with loads of independent, you know, wrestling people like yourselves that are out there doing these things. And, you know, you can get such a good insight into so much. I want to give a shout out to our ambassadors. So we've got Paul Robinson, Mariah May, who also sends us a lot of good content. And then very recently, we've got Xenia from Russia, who's doing some great content for us as well. She does a lot of interviews with a lot of different people as well. But yeah, the promotions you're going to get on there, 1PW, which was massive around 2005 to 2009. They had the likes of AJ Styles in his, you know, real heyday, I would say. There's a match between him and Neville Pack. It's one of the best matches you're going to see. You've got Christopher Daniels, Jeff Jarrett's on there, Raven, Al Snow. It's a real variety of people. In fact, I don't know of many times where we've seen Noah, Ring of Honor, TNA, and then 1PW themselves all mashed in together. But that's how they used to do it then. Even Harry Smith's on there looking quite young as well. You've got TNT Extreme, as I've mentioned, with a whole array of talent. DNA Pro Wrestling, which is really coming up. Paul Robinson, massive down there as well. He's one of their big stars. They're coming on leaps and bounds. And we've got Full Force Wrestling, Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, as we've alluded to earlier. And of course, Ignite Wrestling from Florida, and much more. I can't, you know, I probably missed that so much, obviously. You can only get so much into these, but please check it out. Powered4.TV, and amazingly, here we go, promotional time. Enter the promotional code TRAVEL for 50% off of your first month. So that's 50% off. So that's basically $3.99 for all of that. Plus, we've got new stuff going on there in the next couple of weeks as well. So you're going to want to check that out. We've got some new content coming in from Chicagoland Championship Wrestling. And we've also just signed a new promotion from Belgium, Pro Wrestling All-Stars, which is on the old site Turnbuckle. It was the highest watched show that we ever had. So they've just done their second show. Looks really good. It's very, very different and very unique, but definitely worth checking out. So yeah, please go on and check us out. Any support is very welcomed. And listen, I'm a fan. I say this all the time. Powered 4 is from wrestling fans. We're wrestling fans at heart. This is like a whole dream for me to have like a freaking streaming service to just go on and watch wrestling. That's how I feel about it. I feel passionately about it. But yeah, go on, check it out. And but I want to thank you, Justin, as well, for setting us up with so much good stuff. You've been amazing for us, and we look forward. I look forward personally. Once COVID is done, I want to get out there. I want to see you guys in person, and do more things, do more collaborations. Whenever that will be, I don't know. But like you say, let's hope this vaccine comes along a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to too. Is just being able to have a drink, have a meal, just talk stuff in person. I personally, lucky enough, I get to talk a lot on Zoom every day, but it does take a toll on me when I'm like, sure, I am not talking to a real person. Real quick, and I respectfully talk. I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that you do not have to be in the UK to do Powered 4 TV.
Oh, absolutely.
We live in the new age. I can put a credit card in, and I'm still getting half off, and I get paid for whatever country I want. So I know a lot of people maybe, if you haven't gotten a chance to check out.
No, yeah, worldwide, come in, and all the stuff is available, and we've got our tech guys on the ready if there's any issues. But no, we had loads of people signing up from America already, through Chicago. I think all in all, we've got 28 different countries of people watching so far. So yeah, anyone can come in and check it out. It doesn't matter where you are. And I'd encourage a lot of the people across the pond that maybe have heard about the UK scene, or maybe big fans of Progress that's been going on WWE Network recently, because a lot of those guys, you're going to see them on the independents, and that's been one of our big feedbacks there. And it's amazing as it is, the WWE Network, which caters all this great stuff. And of course, just to end on this subject here, and a real go home here, is I know that Impact Wrestling, they say, we're working with everyone, and we're joining up, and we're not afraid. But I was thinking in my head, well, actually WWE have kind of done that as well. They've kind of signed on with Evolve, and then they've got Progress going on there, and they've got ICW. So it's a lower scheme way of doing it, but they certainly are. They're doing it. One question I've got before we end this, Justin, and it's something that keeps coming up at me. Do you think that WWE will go back to the pay-per-view business?
I don't see how they can now.
You think it's?
I mean, I think they still do. Like, it's still available on like some cable systems, but
small. But to follow up, do you think they regret having seen how well AEW have done with that?
Yeah, I would think so. I think they left money on the table, and then for the talent, that's got to be very frustrating. To know that for $9.99, it doesn't matter if you're on a Raw or a WrestleMania. For them, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the inside of how the pay scale works, but I know that people have voiced their frustration. So yeah, I would think so. And look at how cool it is. Like I said, I don't want to knock any wrestling, but how cool is it that some of these guys have left the WWE and become even making much better money and more famous, i.e. Cody Rhodes, than hanging with the machine. So I love the battle.
Decision.
Yeah, like I said, I love the battle. You're a wrestling fan. Just thank your lucky stars. It's like Christmas for us every day. Just think about what it would be like without one or the other. That's what I hate. I love people's passion, but when you're like NXT and everything else sucks, or AEW and anything else, because I'm normally not on the AEW side, but you got my attention when you're going to start working with other people.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So awesome. So hey, stick around after the sign off here. I got a couple things to ask you, but I want to thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to talking more. Thank you, John Scott.
Thank you.